Hello, my name's Elizabeth, and today we're going to be looking at using conditional logic in Power Query. What is conditional logic? It is an if-then statement. Why would we do this in Power Query instead of just doing it in Excel? Well, there's a few different reasons for that. A big reason is it's a rinse and repeat process that we can set up in the background so that if you drop new data sets in week after week, say if you have weekly reporting or monthly reporting, you can drop your data set in, press the refresh button, and all the report structures and the data you want are going to be there without dragging down any formulas or having to edit anything, look at anything, or change anything. Another reason is if you hand this report off to an end user that's a little bit less comfortable with Excel than you are, sometimes those end users can get a little bit nervous when the pages are cluttered and they're looking through stuff and they get nervous about breaking formulas. And it results in less interaction with your report. So if you use Power Query, we can get rid of these. So let's head on over to the spreadsheet and we'll jump right in. Here's our agenda for this video. Today we're going to look at if-then statements and we're going to categorize some data by price into three different categories: a basic, low, and a high price, using if-then statements in Power Query. We're also going to apply a discount rate depending on the total transaction amount. If we pop on over here to the data tab, just quickly explain our data today. We're looking at sales data. You can see we have a transaction ID, we've got the date of the sale, product category size, color, quantity, and price. Let's bring this data into Power Query. Very first thing we do is, what I always do is I make this data set a table. So to select everything, you can press Control A, or you can drag and drop and select everything. You can drag starting from the top and go on down. At this point, I'm going to go to Table. I'm going to go to Insert, Table right here. Or I can just press Control T. That'll give me the exact same thing. At this point, the dialog box comes up asking to create a table. I do have header, select OK. And something I like to do, I like to name my table. I'm going to name it Sales. You can't have any spaces in your table name, just to keep that in mind. Okay, now we got our data set in a table. Let's upload this to Power Query. So we're going to head on back over to the Data tab, and we're going to click inside the table and select From Table/Range. That's saying, hey, I want my data source to come from this table or range. If you do select a range, Power Query will actually put that range into a table format for you. As you can see, our Power Query box popped up, and this is our table just inside of Power Query. If you scroll on over, all of our columns should be there. So let's dive right in. We want to apply a conditional column that will tell us the category of the price based off of the price point of the item. So we head on over to the Add Column tab up here. So let's look, we can do a custom column or we could do a conditional column. I'm going to start by doing a conditional column to show you how this works. This is a little bit more user-friendly than the custom columns. It actually just sets you right up. We're going to start with a column name. We'll name our column Price Classification. And come on down here to our if-then statements. So if our price is, I'm going to start with greater than or equal to 100, then we're going to say that that is a high priced item. So we want high to output. Now at this point we want to add a clause. As you can see, it's going to go an if else here. So now it'll check for the next condition. So if else price is greater than or equal to $25, then it's going to be a low price item, and we'll add one more. Actually, we don't even need to add one more. We can add one more, but since all of our prices are going to fit within those three tiers, we can actually just use the else box. So else, it's going to be a basic item. At this point, I select OK. And you can see now I got a price classification over here for basic, low, and high priced items. There's also nothing in here that is above $100 price, so you won't see anything in that high priced item category. But if we go append data later and add more to this table and there is an item in that category, it'll then pop up upon a refresh. Just quickly, something I noticed, I didn't make the column header capitals, and I wanted to match the rest of them. So how you go back and edit your custom columns is just double clicking on the step, and that dialog box will pop right back up, and you can make any edits and changes there. Note that if you do this and you've got new steps that are past this point, it'll ask you if you're sure you want to do that, because it might affect the next step in the process. Next, we want to calculate a discount column based off of price times quantity, based off of the total amount sold. For this one, I'm going to use a custom column here. And I'll show you how to do the same setup that we just used the conditional column for in a custom column. You've got a little bit more variability here with a custom column, and there's a lot more you can do with it. It's a little bit less user-friendly. You do have to know the formulas, but they're actually pretty easy and simple to use. So we'll dive right in over here. This one I'm going to call a discount. And we're just going to calculate the amount that someone would get off depending on the price times quantity they spent. So if someone spent, in our case, $50 or more, they're going to get a 10% discount. And if someone spent $100 or more, they're going to get a 15% discount. So let's start with the $100 or more discount. So we're going to go and say if price times quantity is greater than 100, or greater than or equal to, actually, greater than or equal to 100, then we want to take price times quantity times 10%, because we want to know the discount amount. Times quantity times 0.15. That will output our discount percent, our discount amount, excuse me, not our percent. And now we want to do else if, because we want to add in one more condition, else if price times quantity is greater than or equal to 50, then we want to do price. I'll do price first to stay consistent. It doesn't matter though. Price times quantity times 0.1. Else, we want to put a 0. So if neither of these conditions are met, then I want it to return 0 for no discount. So as you can see, if, then, if is your condition, then is your output. So at this point, there's no syntax error. Down here, it's a nice little checkbox to tell you if you have any problems. This will also pop up and underline in red where your problem statement occurs too. So it's really helpful when trying to build these formulas. I select OK. And as you can see, now we've got a discount column that shows all of our discounts depending on the price times the quantity. At this point, let's put a simple total amount column in here. We're going to go back and do a custom column again. Now you can do this if you don't want to have a separate column for discounts. You can do this all in one. You can apply the discounts within the if-then logic statement and subtract the discounts off the total price. We're going to do it in two separate columns just because we do want to see our discount amount. So this one's total price. I'm going to name it total amount. We're going to do quantity times price plus or minus discounts. And we're going to select OK. Perfect. So now we have a price classification, discounts, and total amount. We're going to load this back into Excel so that we can view this data and use it in a pivot table and see this data by categories or by size or however the end user wants it. So we're going to go over to the Home tab. We're going to click Close and Load this little drop down and Close and Load To. It comes up with a few different options. In this case, I actually want to close and load it to a pivot table report. And I'm going to do it on an existing worksheet. I don't want it to create a new worksheet. I'm going to go back to the agenda worksheet and I'm going to create it right here and select OK. Now the pivot table that's drawing off of our Power Query data is right here. And I want for a totals column, I want to know the total amount by category, and price classification. As you can see, what this did is it aggregated our data and such so that we can have a breakdown by category, by price classification. If I wanted to see this in a columns instead of a rows, I can easily dump it over here. Here, what I like to do when I first get on into your pivot tables, I go on into my value and I change the number format so it's a little bit easier to look at. In this case, we're dealing with currency and I don't want 2 decimal places. Actually, we have lower numbers. I am going to leave the 2 decimal places. And I'm going to change this to total amount. If I press OK right now, Excel will give me an error because I already have a column called total amount. So a little trick to get rid of this is just put a little space after it and it will let you use that name. So now I've got it formatted by accessories, by category and by price classification. At this point, say next month, you get new data. So in this case, this would be data for the month of February. And we want to now drop this data into our original data set. And then we want to reload this to include that data in. So let's head on back over to our data tab. There's many different ways to do this. And you can have, connections to separate files. You can be linked to a database. There's tons of different ways to do this. But for my case, we're just gonna select all and add it to the current existing table. So I'm going to copy the data here and I'm going to dump it straight onto the bottom of our table right here. As you can see in just a second, it's going to extend our table format for us. And we're going to go on back over here to our pivot table output. At this point, all we need to do to get that new data is right click here and press the refresh button. And as you can see, now we have items that are priced in that high category. So that'll also pop up. It'll be dynamic with that new data set. One more thing I want to look at is if I wanted to look at this by a date value and I have a date column in here, what I can do is I can add a timeline, select OK. And now what I can do is I can use this timeline to select January numbers or February numbers only, or select them both, or select the entire year. You can change this if you want to look at years, quarters, months, dates. I hope you enjoyed this Excel tutorial, and I hope you find more creative ways to use Power Query.